Now then, Marley, if you had been paying attention to stuff last night instead of digging holes in my garden, chewing that nylon thing, I don't know what it's supposed to be, but it makes a racket, you would have noticed a couple of interesting things occurring. First of all, somebody put up some footage on YouTube from the count at the Haywood and Middleton by-election recently, the one that Labour held on to by 600 votes down from 6,000. And when the returning officer made the announcement, I believe she's the mayoress. Are we allowed to say that anymore? Well, I do anyway. I think she's the mayoress of Rochdale. She's a Labour person. And when she announced the winner was somebody called Liz McInnes, another Labour person, as she came up, they shook hands, and the returning officer said quite clearly something along the lines of, it would have been the same result whatever it said, the implication being that they would have fixed the vote. Now, I'm not suggesting for one moment that that's what happened, or that that's even what she was implying could have happened. I'm being generous there because, you know, let's face it, Labour have a well-documented history of fraudulent postal voting and manipulating the minority block vote of certain sections of the community. But, you know, I'm all about giving people the benefit of the doubt. So the problem is, that leaves one possibility, that she was joking, and I'm willing to accept that. Now, I'm a professional comedian. I like jokes, and I'd be skint without them, quite frankly. But there's a time and a place for jokes. Now, if you're on an aeroplane, for argument's sake, and you jokingly tell the stewardess that you've got some sort of explosive device about your person, that plane's getting diverted and you're being escorted off it in handcuffs, and quite rightly so, and probably going to prison unless you're of the Islamic persuasion, for whom different rules seem to apply. I believe they've also extended this no joking on aeroplanes rule to include people coughing and saying, oh, don't worry, I've just got back from Sierra Leone, you know, the old Ebola gag, or the new Ebola gag, if you will. There are perfectly valid reasons why you don't make jokes like that under those circumstances, I would say. And I would say that a potentially fraught election. Now, let's not forget that Labour called this election on before the previous incumbent was called in his grave, simply with the express purpose of dividing UKIP's support and people on the ground. They made it coincide with the Clacton by-election, which was obviously another important one, and therefore they thought it would in some way benefit them. And who's to say it didn't? They held the seat. We don't know whether there was postal vote fraud involved or not. But in any case, the outcome was what it was. Another issue is this lady, this mayoress from Rochdale, I think I'm correct in saying that's where she's from, but in any case, the returning officer at the Haywood and Middleton by-election count, how on earth is she able to put her shoes on the right feet in the morning if she thinks that out of the battery, and I don't think that's too big an expression, the battery of live microphones that she was surrounded by, how did she think that comment wasn't going to be picked up? Now, she put the lady who won, this Liz McInnes, in a bit of an awkward situation because she just laughed and made herself appear complicit, really. I mean, if we were going to say that there had been some fraud, then she would have appeared complicit in it. I don't think there was. I'm going to be perfectly honest about that. I don't think there was. Any more than the usual fraud. I don't think that the returning officer was complicit in it either, put it that way, in whatever fraud happened. Or indeed didn't happen. There's an allegedly in there somewhere. But realistically, what that lady should have done was gone to the nearest police officer and reported what the returning officer had just said to her. That's just how it ought to work in practice. Now, I don't know if she's a friend of the returning officer or she's certainly a party colleague. If she's a friend, then it might just be, you know, we're all from up north. We don't grass our own people up north. Those are the rules. So it could have been, you know, as simple as that. But she's either dishonest or a complete idiot, or both, this returning officer. That's what I'm going to say. Now, the interesting thing is, that a lot of people brought this clip to the attention of the BBC, an awful lot of people, and there was no mention of this having taken place on the BBC last night. What there was on the BBC last night was a, it was under the flagship of the Panoramic programme, so therefore it's supposed to be some kind of investigative journalism. What it actually was, and what everyone expected it to be honest, there weren't any great surprises there, was the opposite of a puff piece, whatever that's called. I don't know, a straight piece, or I don't know. Anyway, the opposite of a puff piece. It was an attack piece, let's call it that, against UKIP. It was a lot of old stuff that had been rehashed. It had been debunked roundly in the past, all of this stuff. It was put up there by some disgruntled former member, and it was presented as serious journalism. And I'm going to say, I think it backfired on them. I mean, I get what their agenda is. The BBC, let's not forget, receives quite a lot of funding from the European Union, and the remainder of its funding from the UK licence payers, i.e. the voters. But it's the interesting part is the amount they receive from the European Union. On that basis, why would they not attack the party that's trying to take the country out of the European Union? It's going to cut off one of their revenue streams. So I understand why they do it. Doesn't take away from the fact that they have a duty, as outlined in their charter, to report things impartially and fairly, and they certainly didn't do that. And where I would say it may have backfired is in that Twitter came alive with comments, a lot of them from non-UKIP people and even anti-UKIP people, who were saying stuff to the effect of, that was embarrassing, it was shameful, you've shown your true colours, BBC, and so on and so forth. Now here's an interesting thing. That programme went out. There was no mention of this shenanigans at the Haywood and Middleton by-election. Now, I'd like to just put up a little suggestion here, a little exercise for the imagination. Supposing Douglas Carswell, the newly elected MP, UKIP MP for Clacton, had been called up by the returning officer in that election count on the same night, the Thursday, and supposing that returning officer had been a UKIP member, i.e. the same party as the winner, and supposing he had made that comment to Douglas Carswell and it was recorded clearly, with no doubt about what was actually said, and supposing Douglas Carswell had just laughed and thereby made himself appear complicit in whatever had just occurred, if indeed anything had just occurred that was untoward, then I think we're in the situation whereby if the BBC had got wind of that, of such a clip, of a clip such as that existing, you would be looking for a story in the region of the magnitude of, for argument's sake, Malala Yousafzai in her chemistry class in Birmingham discovering a cheap and 100% effective cure for Ebola while simultaneously bringing peace to the Middle East overnight. That's the sort of magnitude of story that would be required to have shifted that off the front, the lead item of the BBC news bulletins, and of course their fellow travellers, the Guardian newspaper and so forth, who also haven't made any reference to it, nor the Independent, nor indeed any of the tabloids, because this we're all in it together thing, it's kind of become a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's they are all in it together. It's the name of the game is stop UKIP at all costs, because between the other 2.5 parties, the Labour, the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats, I'm being generous by calling them half a party, but you know what I mean, there really isn't anything to choose. They're all they've all got their noses in the trough, and they've got jobs lined up for when the domestic gravy train hits the buffers. They've got jobs lined up in Europe, a lot of them. So it's the world against UKIP. To date, up until last night, they have. I would hardly go so far as to say that they've been subtle. They certainly haven't been subtle, but they haven't been quite as obscenely obvious in their intentions as they were last night. They ignored, just to recap briefly, they ignored this story that came directly out of the count at a by-election up north, where the returning officer appeared to imply that there'd been something untoward going on. She may have been joking. I'm going to repeat that. She may have been joking, in which case it was a very, very bad taste joke, and she was a very, very stupid woman for allowing it to be overheard. And the second part of it is the Panorama attack piece against Nigel Farage personally and the UKIP party in general that went out under the guise of investigative journalism. And the person who presented it, I forget his name, Dara, something Irish sort of name, McIntyre, that rings a bell. Apparently he's a Labour voter. You know, there aren't any redeeming features to this whole Panorama story. But the BBC have shown their true colours, and yet again, UKIP seem to have benefited from those who would try to put them down. I should declare an interest here. I'm a UKIP member, and I hope they at least hold the balance of power. In an ideal world, in an ideal electoral system, Farage would be the next Prime Minister, but we'll settle for deputy or even power broker. Just get us out of the EU. Let's get the country back. What do you think, Marley? What do you reckon, son? We'll go and see what Mum's got for tea, yeah? Good lad.